I've fought your war 1,000 times and won them all. And I know this is the moment that will change everything.
All right, guys, I'm hanging out with Halldor Fannar, CTO for CCP, and we are chilling in the lovely Harpa Convention Center. There's been a lot of, obviously a lot going on, but probably the biggest focus for this year's EVE Fan Fest has sort of been Dust and, and the integration into EVE. Have you been happy so far with the feedback you've seen, and then that first keynote where you kind of revealed the big moments?
Yeah, there's been a huge build-up for us to this moment. I mean, the problem has been for us is that when we initially started talking about what we wanted to achieve, it was met with, understandable skepticism and also concerns. As you saw as part of the keynote, Hilmar showed jokingly that one of our CSM members had pointed out that this would take about 18 years to achieve what we wanted to do. And I can understand that, viewpoint, because in some ways, when you look at the full scale of what we want to achieve, it's definitely going to take years. But looking back at, for instance, EVE, EVE has almost now been in operation for 10 years. We're going to have a 10-year anniversary next year. And over those, almost 10 years, we've evolved the game drastically, massively. And we're, of course, expecting to see the same thing with Dust. I mean, change is always a cause for concern. But what I think we managed to achieve yesterday is to show them that what we're building is a very compelling game. It already has a lot of polish, even though, we're not shipping it tomorrow. So I hope that we're winning them over. But, they've invested a lot of time into EVE. So it's important for them, and important for us as well, that they're at ease with what we're about to do.
Right. What's the biggest challenge in terms of sort of courting two audiences, essentially, where you have to stay true to the EVE core, but also bringing in these people who have probably no introduction necessarily?
And it's a great question, because what we've done in the past, or tried, with different levels of success, was to introduce new game styles and new game features into EVE Online. That's what we did in the past, to try to cater to a different audience. And we quickly found that it didn't work too well, because the people that were already playing EVE, they liked the game for what it was. And the people that joined were joining because those people were mostly pulling them in, right? Right. And you could even argue that EVE is a hard game to get into, and some people joke that it doesn't even have a learning curve, it has a learning cliff. And there's a lot of truth to that, I think. And our players kept coming back and say, don't dumb it down. And so we understood that in some ways we had cornered the market on making a very hardcore game that was hard, and but once people got into it, they really enjoyed it. Right. So we realized, let's not change that formula, because we found success there. But let's look at all the people that have tried EVE, but didn't find a home in it, right? They liked the setting, they liked the idea of the sci-fi universe and what was happening there. They loved reading about the stories that our players would, make happen, just because there's so much intrigue, backstabbing, and space opera that happens in EVE. But the gameplay style didn't suit them. They wanted something more action-based, maybe gameplay that they were more familiar with. And that's where the idea for Dust is really born, right? What I'm trying to say is, though, that we feel like the different cultures will bring different strengths, and both sides will realize that the sum of the parts is greater than just the parts. And so, but it's going to take some time.
Can you shed some light in terms of the choice of PlayStation 3 exclusive in this game? I think some people might have thought like, oh, well, you've got a PC game like EVE, Dust would be a natural choice for joining it on PC. What were the strengths of PlayStation as an exclusive platform?
There's a couple of factors that come into play there. As I mentioned before, our idea was to reach an audience that we hadn't been able to cater to before. And we thought to ourselves, well, if we make this a first-person shooter game and we launch it on PC, we are in some ways, eating from the same pie. Right. So let's see if we can find a new pie to reach. And that's one of the factors that comes in. But we feel, at least from our perspective, and as we as CCP see the world, the console has really been missing that kind of killer app. The game that goes just beyond what you thought was even possible or imaginable. Yes, some games have added social features, they have some leaderboards, but there's so much more. And after seeing what has happened with EVE, we felt like, here's an opportunity. The hardware is there, the connectivity is there, and with the PlayStation in particular, the PlayStation is an open network in the sense that the PSN, you can play there for free. And that was a huge factor in our decision making. because we wanted this to be a zero barrier of entry play, right? And so if you took another platform where there was a charge just to play online, then you couldn't truly be free to play. And then finally, and I think it's a very important piece, is that Sony was really willing to take the step with us. As much as people have been skeptical, and you have that example of the person that said it would take 18 years. Sony felt it was going to take a shorter time than that. And they were really willing also to explore whatever policies or processes that they had in place and see how they would fit or not fit with what we wanted to do, and then work out those kinks. And that's really what we've been able to do with them. So that's a huge factor in us going exclusive, and it's important for people to understand that. So we didn't go exclusive just because that would be best. We thought there was some great business aspect there. A huge factor of it was if we went exclusive, then there was commitment from the other side to really make the game and the vision happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So another thing it seems like you guys balance where it's from a design perspective is you want it to be easily accessible and play for people that want to just play quick pickup games. But then also we saw that the depth of like the skills and the reality that a hardcore game does exist within this easy accessibility.
Yeah.
How did you decide the balance between those things, and how important is that sort of optional depth to just being able to compete on any level?
Yeah. So I would say the way we're approaching Dust is really I would say it's 3 lines, effectively, in priority order. The first priority, it is a AAA first-person shooter for the console. If the game doesn't feel right, they won't play it, right? Even if it looks good, if it just doesn't feel right, the way the guy uses that weapon, the way he uses the knife, if it doesn't feel right, they're just going to be put off by it. Number 2 was persistence. And that was the whole concept of let's take the RPG elements that we've had in EVE for such a long time and just add that on top. People are on Facebook. Their page is the content of Facebook. Facebook doesn't have story writers that write the stories, right? The content is just what the people are and what they do, right? So I felt like being at E3, talking to people, they all wanted more meaning, something that they could build. So the persistence gives you that, right? Because now you can evolve, you can train your skills, you can set goals for yourself. And the fact that you're now playing a shooter maybe every day isn't just that you are, as a player, getting more skillful in the controls. You're actually advancing in the game, right? You're learning new things, and you almost have a career path now as a first-person shooter.
Right.
So I thought that was we felt that was the second layer that was really important. And then you go to the third layer, where you now join a corporation with people, and you're becoming part of the big warfare that has raged in EVE now for over 10 years.
Right.
But we understand that there will be just a fraction of the players that go all the way down to the third layer. But that's ultimately where we would like everybody to go, just so they can experience that. And they can understand why people come and fly from all over the world to Iceland to be at FanFest. Some of them coming every year, because there's something there. There's some connection that they haven't been able to find in other games, that they find in the EVE universe.
As it currently exists, where you kind of have, okay, we've got Dust coming in, and in some ways it supports the EVE universe and through the contracts and the way that works. Is it possible that with Dust's popularity, it could outgrow the existing EVE universe and then have to have some new system to support that? Yeah,
so I mean, it's absolutely in the cards that you will have more players playing Dust. And it's a simple numbers game. If you just look at the registered players that are on the PlayStation Network, and you look at the fact that this is free to play, so the barrier for you to download is just that, do you want to wait for the download, right? And then if you like the game, then and you do more than one match, then yeah, it's highly likely that you'll have more people. But then you can also look at it differently, and you can say a match in Dust is typically like 15 minutes. So maybe a player will play a match or two a day. So we're talking less than an hour. Whereas a typical gameplay session in EVE is about 3 hours. So if you start just multiplying and calculating rather time that people spent, I think in some ways it's going to be hard for any community to try to spend more time than the EVE players already do. So you can argue that they will never really be at a disadvantage because they're so motivated and they're so knowledgeable. But still, this is of course a concern on the game design. You have to make sure that this just doesn't topple the scales instantly. And that's also why the connection between EVE and Dust, we're slowly turning on that faucet.
One of CCP's strengths has been, especially with all this new developments, is expanding beyond the expectations of what an MMO should be, and potential opportunities for extra social, breaking out of the box. What do you see the future, even beyond these two games, of like expansion in that?
I mean, Dust is the first step. I mean, it's a huge first step, but it's only the first step if you look at it that way, because what we really want to do is introduce then more windows into the EVE universe.
Right.
Today we have kind of, you could call it a luxury problem, but we have the problem that we have players now that played the game from the beginning. Right. And you know, things have changed. They are now maybe family men, and they don't have the 3 hours to spend on playing the game in the regular play session. So Dust is a way maybe to service the need. They still play in EVE, they're still connected with the same universe, they still keep their friends in the universe, but they're now engaging maybe in 15 minutes. So that's, yeah, that's one way of dealing with it, but then we see that, you know, you have so many other hardware platforms that have been introduced, and you look out on the horizon, you can see how things are just changing. Play styles are also changing. We have new forms of games that are getting more popular. Right. And if there's a way for us to create an experience that fits with the EVE setting and kind of the EVE philosophy and caters to that play style or that hardware, then we feel that we should look at introducing that to our players, because that allows them to stay connected with the universe. The communication technology that we're using to connect Dust with EVE is the same. That technology was actually originally conceived to service mobile web browsers and tablets, right? It just so happens we can use it as well for PlayStation, so we decided to use that as the tracer bullet and the torture test, and yeah, it's going to be a big torture test. But that puts us in a great position to expand it. And here at FanFest, we're actually talking about this connection capability, also explaining it to our users, because we're going to open up a lot of the programming interfaces to our players. Mm-hmm. Many of them are very crafty and already have interesting applications that they've built. Yeah. And so this will open up a new world to them in terms of what kind of applications they can build for EVE players. I mean, we're already gathering metrics from the game to understand what kind of play styles are emerging. And just like we've seen with EVE, when we launched EVE initially in 2003, we didn't really predict everything that happened in the game, so we know we won't do this. We won't get it right this time around either. So we just want to be there and be able to harvest the early on learnings, so we're done with those when we go into the full public launch, which is going to be towards the end of this year.
What's up, everyone? We're here to let you know that Bite Me is moving from Tuesdays to Fridays, only on Machinima.
Oh yeah.
Friday, April 6th, that's when you can start tuning in to all the blood, gore, and zombie madness.
Could your weekend get any better?
That's right, can't.